He wasn't just a husband. He was a master manipulator who turned trust into a weapon. After killing his first wife and getting away with it, Malcolm Webster tried to repeat the same deadly plan, until one survivor uncovered the terrifying truth he spent years hiding. This is the story of how a charming nurse built his life on lies, engineered perfect tragedies, and finally faced the one mistake he never saw coming. Malcolm Webster lived in a quiet coastal town where people rarely questioned anything that appeared peaceful. His small house sat near the edge of a cliff overlooking calm waters, giving him the perfect backdrop for the image he worked hard to maintain. He carried himself with a calm, steady presence that made others feel comfortable around him. Neighbors often saw him leaving for early morning shifts in neatly pressed uniforms, always giving a polite nod before driving away. His routine never seemed unusual, which made him blend in even more. As a nurse, he was trusted automatically, and he used that trust like a shield. Patients described him as gentle, coworkers viewed him as reliable, and his supervisors considered him someone who never caused trouble. Everything about him appeared ordinary, and he made sure of it. Yet beneath this polished surface, Malcolm spent much of his private time planning. He kept notebooks filled with details that had nothing to do with his job, schedules of people he knew, lists of locations rarely visited, reminders about insurance deadlines, and strategies he wrote with chilling precision. He saved clippings about accidents and medical issues, studying them with an interest that went far beyond curiosity. To outsiders, Malcolm was simply organized, but his meticulous habits were far more calculated. His first wife had no reason to suspect anything dark behind his quiet nature. She saw what everyone else saw, a stable man with a calm lifestyle. She believed they were building a future together, unaware that Malcolm viewed her as part of a much larger plan he had designed long before their marriage. Every gesture he made, every smile he offered, and every seemingly harmless decision he took served a purpose. In his mind, trust was a tool, and he intended to use it fully without ever revealing the truth hidden beneath his gentle exterior. In the early months of their marriage, everything appeared stable and predictable, exactly the way Malcolm wanted it. He encouraged his wife to lean on him for support, presenting himself as someone who could handle responsibilities with ease. He gradually took control of household bills, insurance paperwork, and long-term financial decisions, always insisting it would make her life easier. She accepted his help without hesitation, unaware that each signature and document shift quietly placed more power in his hands. Malcolm studied every account and policy, adjusting details in ways that ensured he benefited from any future misfortune. His actions blended seamlessly into everyday life, making them nearly invisible. As time passed, he found subtle ways to create confusion around her. Important appointments were moved without her knowledge, bank statements disappeared, and medications were reorganized in ways that made her question her memory. Malcolm introduced small errors deliberately, choosing moments when she was already stressed so the incidents felt natural rather than orchestrated. He never showed frustration when she grew concerned. Instead, he acted patient and supportive, which deepened her trust in him. The more she relied on him, the more he tightened his hold. Malcolm also isolated her socially, though never in obvious ways. He suggested she needed rest instead of meeting friends, implied certain relatives were too demanding, and filled their schedule with activities that kept her close to home. She slowly drifted away from her old life, thinking the changes were her own decisions. Malcolm's plan depended on her vulnerability, and he shaped every aspect of her world to ensure it. To everyone who knew them, the marriage appeared healthy. Friends saw a caring husband and a woman who seemed well looked after. No one realized the foundation of their relationship was built entirely on Malcolm's quiet manipulations, crafted with a purpose only he understood. The night of the crash began like any other, which was exactly how Malcolm intended it. He suggested a short drive to clear their minds, choosing a route his wife had never questioned. The narrow rural road twisted between dark fields and abandoned farmhouses, offering long stretches without witnesses. Malcolm had studied this road for weeks, walking along its edges during his breaks and memorizing the exact point where the terrain dipped sharply toward a cluster of trees. He knew how the shadows fell, how the gravel shifted, and how little traffic passed at that hour. To anyone else, the area seemed ordinary. To Malcolm, it was the perfect stage. When the car reached the bend he had planned for, Malcolm manipulated the situation with quiet precision. Investigators would later determine that the vehicle's movements did not match a typical accident, but at the time no one questioned the scene. The car veered off the road and slammed against a tree, crushing the passenger side where his wife sat. Malcolm positioned himself carefully before help arrived, lying near the vehicle as though thrown from the impact. He created shallow injuries, just enough to appear dazed and hurt without risking real harm. His breathing was controlled, his expression deliberately shocked. When emergency responders found him, they saw a man in distress and a woman who showed no signs of life. Flashing lights reflected off broken glass as they worked to assess the scene. Malcolm was taken to a hospital, where he remained still and quiet, completing the image of a grieving husband. No one noticed the absence of skid marks or the inconsistency in his injuries. The crash was labeled a tragic accident, and sympathy poured in from every direction. In the silence that followed, Malcolm accepted the insurance payout with a sorrowful expression, already planning the next chapter of his life. After the crash, Malcolm quietly left the town that had once seen him as a grieving husband. He carried no signs of panic, only a calculated readiness to start over. With the insurance payout secured and no questions raised, he moved to a distant region where his past could not follow him. There, he began building a new identity with deliberate care. He adjusted his appearance, changed his daily habits, and created personal stories that made him seem humble, lonely, and eager to rebuild his life. Each detail was chosen to attract sympathy and trust. He kept a low profile at first, learning the routines of the new community and observing the people around him. Malcolm attended local gatherings often enough to appear social while remaining mysterious in a way that drew interest. He avoided subjects that risked revealing his history and instead focused on presenting himself as a calm, dependable man who had endured hardship. His quiet presence made him seem safe, and many people welcomed him. Eventually, Malcolm directed his attention toward a woman who appeared open, trusting, and ready for companionship. He approached her with gentle consistency, offering help whenever possible and speaking about future stability without revealing anything concrete. She interpreted his steadiness as sincerity, unaware that he was repeating a pattern he had perfected long before meeting her. Their relationship progressed quickly as Malcolm subtly shaped the direction of their daily life. He volunteered to manage finances, organized responsibilities, and positioned himself as the person she could rely on for guidance. Outsiders viewed him as a supportive partner, someone bringing comfort to a woman who had been alone for too long. In reality, Malcolm was laying the groundwork for another calculated plan, confident that the reinvention he crafted would shield him from suspicion once again. Malcolm entered his new relationship with deliberate focus, repeating the same methods he had used before but with even more care. He began by offering small favors that seemed thoughtful, taking tasks off her hands so she could rest. She saw him as reliable, a partner who wanted to lighten her load. Gradually, he expanded his role, managing her bills, arranging her appointments, and reviewing documents she barely looked at. Every responsibility he assumed brought him closer to full control, though she didn't recognize the shift happening around her. He observed her habits closely, noting when she felt tired, which routines she depended on, and what caused her stress. These details helped him identify how best to influence her. Slowly, he introduced confusion into her daily life. Medications were shifted, schedules changed, and financial papers returned with small differences she could not explain. Each moment of uncertainty allowed Malcolm to appear calm and supportive, strengthening the idea that she needed his guidance. To deepen his influence, he carefully widened the distance between her and the people who cared about her. He encouraged her to stay home more often, suggesting she needed rest or quiet time. He subtly questioned whether certain friends were good influences, planting doubts she could not easily dismiss. Over time, she became more isolated, relying on him for stability. Meanwhile, Malcolm studied potential accident locations with the same precision he once used before. He examined quiet roads, hidden curves, and areas with few witnesses. He rehearsed explanations in his mind, shaping a future narrative that would make any tragedy appear natural. His partner sensed only dedication, unaware of the intentions behind his attentiveness. By the time Malcolm felt ready, he believed every detail had been arranged in his favor, confident his plan would unfold without suspicion from anyone watching. Malcolm waited patiently for the right moment to advance his plan, studying his partner's habits until he understood exactly when she was most vulnerable. He chose an evening when the roads were quiet and the weather created low visibility, believing such conditions would support the appearance of a natural accident. The route he selected included sharp curves, steep drops, and long sections without nearby houses. He had driven it alone several times, noting every detail that could help him stage a convincing emergency. By the time he suggested a relaxing nighttime drive, his plan was already prepared in his mind. As they traveled, Malcolm prepared to create a distraction that would force her attention away from the road at a critical moment. He had planned the timing carefully, anticipating how the car would react and how he could frame the event as a sudden mechanical failure. However, just as he initiated the first step of his plan, the unexpected appearance of another vehicle disrupted everything. Headlights illuminated their car from behind, removing the isolation he relied on. Startled, his partner reacted instinctively, steering the car enough to prevent a severe crash. Instead of plunging into a dangerous drop, the vehicle slid into a shallow embankment. The impact caused minor injuries, but the outcome fell far short of Malcolm's intentions. Emergency responders arrived quickly due to the witness who reported the erratic movement. Malcolm maintained a performance of concern, answering questions with steady composure. Yet subtle signs betrayed him. Responders noticed his unusual calmness, and his partner sensed something unsettling in the way he examined the scene rather than responding emotionally. The failed attempt marked the beginning of a shift he could not fully control. It was the first moment when hidden doubts began forming around him quietly. In the weeks after the failed crash, unsettling changes in Malcolm's behavior became impossible to ignore. His partner noticed how closely he watched her daily movements, paying attention to details he had never cared about before. He questioned minor decisions, tracked her appointments, and seemed tense whenever she spent time away. What had once felt like support slowly turned suffocating, creating a growing sense of unease. His unnerving calmness when discussing the accident only added to her discomfort, as if the near-fatal event had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. At work, Malcolm's colleagues began noticing unusual habits. He spent long breaks studying obscure medical topics unrelated to his responsibilities and requested supplies he had no reason to use. These actions contradicted the dependable, consistent employee they had known, quietly raising concern among those observing him. Neighbors also contributed unnoticed pieces of the larger picture. One reported metallic clanging from his garage late at night. Another recalled seeing him walking along isolated roads at odd hours. Each incident seemed harmless alone, but together they suggested someone acting in secrecy. Encouraged by her family, his partner sought further medical evaluations. Tests showed no condition that could explain her persistent symptoms, prompting questions she could no longer dismiss. Memories resurfaced, misplaced medication, sudden mechanical problems, and subtle remarks about her health. Each recollection chipped away at the trust she once placed in him. Suspicion gradually hardened into fear. She recognized a controlled pattern forming around her, with each detail connecting to the next, revealing a larger plan she had never anticipated. The truth became undeniable, and she realized she had to act to protect herself. The carefully crafted image Malcolm had built was beginning to crumble, exposing intentions she could no longer ignore. Fearing for her life, Malcolm's partner began planning her escape carefully. She knew any sudden move could alert him, so she acted quietly, gathering evidence piece by piece. She copied financial records, insurance documents, and notes showing unusual changes Malcolm had made. She also documented her symptoms, the failed crash, and his subtle manipulations. Each detail revealed a clear pattern of control and deceit she could no longer ignore. When the threat felt urgent, she contacted authorities in a nearby district, far from Malcolm's usual area. She handed over her evidence, including documents, medical results, and descriptions of his controlling behavior. Investigators reviewed the case carefully and quickly saw the evidence was consistent and convincing. Reports of manipulated medications, orchestrated accidents, and financial irregularities raised immediate concern. Detectives examined Malcolm's past and discovered alarming similarities to the death of his first wife. Insurance changes, suspicious incidents, and repeated patterns showed deliberate planning rather than coincidence. Traffic specialists re-examined the original crash and found inconsistencies proving it had not been an accident. Each finding confirmed his actions were calculated and repeated, designed to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, Malcolm remained unaware his partner had taken steps to protect herself. She relocated quietly under authorities' supervision to a secure location beyond his reach. With her safe, investigators expanded their review, monitoring his movements and analyzing additional records. Malcolm continued preparing as if she were still under his control, unaware the situation had changed. The carefully controlled world he had built around her began to unravel. The silence that once masked compliance now concealed the tightening grip of law enforcement, and the truth he had hidden for years was finally closing in. Police acted quickly once enough evidence linked Malcolm to both incidents. They detained him during a routine outing, choosing a moment when he was isolated. Malcolm remained calm, offering no resistance, presenting the same composed expression he had used to gain trust for years. Inside the interrogation room, he tried to maintain the persona of a confused and innocent man, but investigators were prepared. They presented detailed evidence showing patterns between the death of his first wife and the attempt on his current partner. Insurance increases, financial transfers, and timing of major events highlighted deliberate planning. Forensic experts re-examined the original crash, pointing out inconsistencies that contradicted Malcolm's account. They also analyzed the recent crash, using witness reports and mechanical assessments to show that it could not have been accidental. Medical analysis revealed that his partner's symptoms were linked to substances Malcolm had access to, proving manipulation. Every detail reinforced the investigators' case, showing a man who carefully orchestrated tragedies while maintaining the image of a caring husband. Malcolm attempted to create doubt, offering explanations that seemed plausible at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Each record, timeline, and witness account built a structure he could not dismantle. His carefully constructed facade began to crumble under scrutiny. Investigators outlined a chilling pattern of manipulation, control, and repeated attempts to engineer accidents for personal gain. By the end of questioning, it was clear that Malcolm's long history of deception had been uncovered. The man who had fooled everyone for years was finally exposed. The truth left no room for doubt, and the case against him had become impossible to refute. In the courtroom, Malcolm sat with the same calm expression he had used for years, as if detachment could erase the overwhelming evidence against him. Jurors watched closely, searching for signs of remorse, but he remained still. Prosecutors presented a complete timeline showing how he manipulated relationships, staged accidents, and gained financially from tragedies. Every detail was laid out clearly: insurance policies, medical interference, and repeated patterns connecting two separate relationships. Experts explained how Malcolm used his medical knowledge to exploit vulnerabilities. They described how he created symptoms that mimicked illness, manipulated medications, and planned accidents to appear natural. Financial analysts revealed accounts where insurance payouts had been secretly transferred, showing his actions were motivated by greed and control, not misfortune. Each expert added a piece to the portrait of a man who lived behind a carefully crafted facade. Victims' families listened in silence as their losses were re-examined. The surviving partner provided a detailed account of her experiences, describing the fear that grew as she realized the truth. Her testimony revealed that Malcolm's methods were deliberate, consistent, and calculated. When the verdict was read, the courtroom remained tense. Malcolm was found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and extensive fraud. His mask of charm and innocence finally shattered, revealing the hollow foundation beneath. The sentence ensured he could never manipulate or harm again. The case became a chilling reminder that danger can hide behind warmth, routine, and familiarity, and that long-deceived truths eventually surface, no matter how carefully they are buried.